Hi, everyone. This is Alex Lindsay sitting in for Leo, who is on jury duty. And today we're here with Clayton Morris and Andy Ihnatko. We're going to be talking about iOS, the new beta, some ways that Apple's handling nefarious use of the UDIDs, and is the iOS the next gaming platform? Of course, we're also talking about Lion, actually some of the problems with Lion and NVIDIA cards and some of the upgrade problems, but also you're getting a new USB key, and we're going to be talking about how all of that works. All this along with tips of the week and picks of the week on this episode of MacBreak Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for MacBreak Weekly is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 259, recorded Tuesday, August 9th, 2011. Jury Duty, Part 1. This episode of MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by GoToMeeting, now with high-definition group video conferencing. For your free 30-day trial, go to GoToMeeting.com and use the offer code MacBreak. And by Carbonite. Backing up files on your PC or Mac is safe and easy with Carbonite. For a free trial plus 2 free months with purchase, go to Carbonite.com, offer code MacBreak. And by TextExpander from Smile. Save time and effort with TextExpander by typing short abbreviations to insert text snippets you frequently use. For a free demo, visit smilesoftware.com/MacBreak. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to MacBreak Weekly. This is Alex, sitting in for Leo, who is on jury duty. I can't tell you what he's talking about or what he's in there. That would be legal. I'd end up in jail, and then no one would be here to do the show. But fortunately, I do have some folks to do the show with. Leo is the only one on jury duty at the moment. We've got Andy Ihnatko coming in from the Chicago Sun-Times. Hey, Andy.
Hello, Alex.
And Clayton Morris from Fox & Friends and Daddy on Board. Hey, Clayton.
Hey, guys. Nice to see you.
Good to see you, too. And there is, of course, a lot of news with in the Apple world here. We've got Apple, 5th most innovative company. 5th. Which I was kind of surprised by. I think it's just that you get used to hearing about Apple as the most innovative company and everything else, and it came in 5th. Now, it did come in front of Google, which is number 7, Microsoft, which is number, I think, something like 84, and so, but it's number 1 in this list, and this is on the Forbes list. Number 1 is Salesforce.com, then Amazon, Intuitive Surgical. Well, I'm kind of curious what they're so innovative about. Tencent Holdings, which is number 4, and then Apple's number 5. So, first of all, Clayton, what are these companies in 1 through 4 have that Apple doesn't?
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, I think you make these arbitrary lists sometime, and as you
and then you get people like us talking about it.
Right, but it is interesting, and I think I think Salesforce is an interesting point on this, at being number 1 here. And I think, what's interesting about Salesforce and what they're doing is they're doing a lot in the mobile space. And actually, they're relying largely on iPads to do it. Across the board for Salesforce, many companies are building their infrastructure on the back of Salesforce. But my wife, writing a piece for Forbes not too long ago, actually did quite a bit of research on the Salesforce side of things. And interestingly, the tablets that they're using are iPads. And the infrastructure, put it this way, this is really fascinating to me, is that think of a hip replacement company. Because God knows I'll probably need one day. You have these salesmen all across the world who need to have updated information about different parts, different joints, different sockets that they can go out and sell to different doctors, right? But every country has different statistics. Every country has different laws about when and which these hip sockets might be available. Maybe in the United States, there has to be a whole level of testing by the FDA or whomever to approve these things. Iceland, maybe they can just push it on through. Salesforce, these salesmen are able to go out to these doctors, and that morning, just like receiving an issue of the Daily that morning, they're able to see on their iPads the updated parts information. So if they had a meeting with an individual that afternoon,
Right. Well, and they're doing
they can go to that meeting and boom, it's right there. Oh, I can sell you that hip replacement socket because it was approved overnight.
Well, and that's their basic CRM, and I'm not going to get too much further into it. Journalistically, I need to say that Salesforce is one of my company's largest clients. so I don't want to dig into it too deeply. But but one of the things they are doing is allowing people to program on the cloud. For instance, we manage most of our company inside of their platform. Andy, what do these companies have that is making them more innovative, or what does Apple have that gets it to number 5?
I think when you take a look at that list a second time, it's not that surprising that Apple is number 5 and all these companies that other people would not have come up with at the tip of their tongues are higher than them, because all these other companies, they have a certain amount of freedom that companies like Google and Apple don't do. They don't have to deal with millions and millions and millions of users. They have to deal with tens of thousands of customers. And also, there's not sort of an abstract relationship between their customers and their profitability. So if someone comes in saying, we are only one of your installations, but it would make us so happy right now and make our lives so much better if you could add this one feature or make this device that you've developed or the software you developed work with this one system that we absolutely have to deal with. Their ability to scramble a team, do a black box job, and actually get that working very, very quickly, and in doing so, stumble into a way that, wow, that is actually a better way to do it. I can't believe we didn't figure out that for us ourselves. That's an agility that a company like Apple doesn't have. Although it's also not surprising that Amazon is number 4 was it?
Amazon is number 2.
Number 2.
Two.
Right? I've really seen Amazon as Apple's greatest competitor for hearts and minds consumer innovation. Because they've just really pulled off a series of quiet revolutions where they're letting Google and Apple do the big stage, black turtleneck, tent your fingers and talk to the camera sort of presentations. Amazon is a company that says, oh, yeah, well, we decided it'd be kind of cool if all the music you bought was available to you in the cloud, so we did that. Here, enjoy.
Well, and I think that one thing that we can see that is very common among all of these is that you do have companies who have proven that they can redefine themselves over and over and over and over again. When you look at Salesforce, they started off with CRM. They now do cloud computing, social enterprise. There's a whole lot of things that they're doing that are completely different than what they started doing. Amazon, when Amazon moved into electronics, when they started going, we're gonna sell things other than books, I thought they were absolutely insane. I was like, this is where I buy all my books. I don't want them to make it more complicated. They're going to ruin everything, by going off and ruining this perfect experience that I have. And now, the first place I go to find out whether I can buy something is Amazon, because I don't want to think about it. I don't want to get in the car. I don't want to deal with anybody else's login. I know that it's going to show up. And in the same way, Apple, moving to iPhone from computers, and Google moving from search to all the other things that they're doing. So I think that to be up here, it seems like you need to be able to continue to redefine that market. And I have noticed how many of them are cloud-based. I mean, how many of them are something that I think one of the things that's hard for Apple is that when you're making hardware, it's hard to be innovative.
No, that's a great point. And remember, this list was written by Forbes, a financial magazine that is looking at the technicals, and not necessarily the fundamentals of a company, but looking back over the history of Apple, at least over the last 10 years, to see the innovation speed. I mean, constantly innovating, constantly pushing the envelope on innovation. But then I'm also struck by how far down Microsoft is on the list, 86th. And you talk about, not to get too far bogged down in buying stocks, but you look at the technicals of a company, which is sort of future predicting of where that company is going to go. And you anticipate that Apple will have some exciting releases coming down the pike in the fall, next year, 2012, 2013. What is Microsoft? Where is their innovation space coming? And that's probably why they're so far down on this list.
Yeah.
Well, let's tie all this together. And one of the great things that Amazon does is allows you to look at every single rechargeable shaver on the market and then sigh, shake your head, say, okay, look, whatever the second cheapest one is that's within the top 5 of sales, if that's the one I'm getting, I'm done. That's my new shaver just arrived today. That's after 10 years, I finally switched my shaver, and this is really seriously what I'm thinking about right now, because I'm looking at these listings on Saturday, saying, for heaven's sake, there is a $200 shaver on the market that shaves, your face. And it's not a hover shaver.
And let me tell you, Andy, I can tell you from experience, it's awesome.
Okay, I'm sure it is, and I'm sure that I'm sure that there are women out there who would much rather kiss your 1 micron closer shave than my perfectly good shave that of a guy who still has $170 to spend on a Broadway show.
Exactly. You're going out to dinner. You're taking a lady out to dinner. Alex is like, yep.
It has nothing to do with that at all. It has
Alex is ordering, saying, I will have the chicken quesadilla, and the lady will have an item of equal or lesser value.
It has to do with how often you shave. If you only shave once a week for the show, see, then you need something that can really, cut through the weeds. That's all I'm saying. So anyway, that's the real issue.
At a $12 wall beard. But my point is that I'm not sure that Microsoft is all that hurt about this list, because they still have about 90% of their market. They're still making money hand over fist. It's not dramatic, but they're still essentially doing things that cause them to succeed as a company. Right. And when you get down to it, there are a great many people that don't really require an innovative shaver. They just want to shave. That's the sort of stuff that Microsoft makes. So always going to be a market for that. And I think they're at this point, they've sort of let go of the idea that they are going to be the superhero saviors that redefine an industry, and they're just simply going to be happy about looking at those numbers.
I don't think they're happy with that. I think that they want to be that. They want to be in the top 10. They want to be in the top 20. I think that they just can't figure out a way to get back there.
No. Are they now a utility, though? Are they, to Andy's point, are they now a utility company? We don't need them to innovate. We just need the lights on.
Well, there are a couple of dimensions of that. One is that they're all the innovative things that they do. They don't have control over their market right now. A little over half of all Windows installations are still Windows XP, and Microsoft cannot do anything to get people to upgrade, except for maybe.
Well, but if they were Apple, if it was Apple, Apple would just say, "Well, we're not. You can't run any new applications on Windows XP." Like they would just, if it was, that's how Apple would move everybody forward. We're going to drop the price, and then we're going to say that nothing else runs. Oh wait, they just did that, right?
And realize that's only something they were able to do starting this year, because they've always had control over the hardware. Now they also have presumptive control over the app market space. They're doing cool things with this. In September, I think, is the deadline that they've announced to developers, saying that if you're writing Lion apps, it has to be sandbox. You have to have sandbox apps ready by September, or else we're not going to preview anymore. That's something they can do. Microsoft does not have that ability, because they're dealing with what is the biggest advantage that Windows still has for the users. Dozens and dozens of highly competitive companies making better and better and cheaper hardware.
Yeah. Well, but even from the enterprise space, right? When I go to the ATM at whatever Bank of America, it's running Microsoft. The car that I drive, it's powered by Microsoft. So from an enterprise standpoint, it seems like Microsoft has the dominance there. It's not as sexy, perhaps, it's not as attractive a market, one that shifts so much. But hey, the lights are on. We're making money.
For now. So speaking of, I think you're right. When I say for now,
you're advocating nationalizing Microsoft as a national resource that's way too important to be left in the hands of private enterprise.
Right, exactly. I think I've often thought of Clayton as a real nationalization kind of guy. He's always pushing that forward.
Exactly.
So the coming up as far as innovation, iOS 5 is now been released. It looks like there might be multiple iCloud logins. Andy, have you seen any rumors about that?
I've been doing a lot of reading about what's been posted on the various sites about it, and the general take that's available to the public about iOS 5 is that this latest beta seems to be mostly about taking it to the next step, where now iCloud services can now be tested. Right. And that jives with other things that have been published on the unofficial Apple weblog and Apple Insider and the rest, about how now if you're a developer and you have to have a pile of different betas across multiple platforms to even get access to iCloud at this point. Now when you log into iCloud, it's saying, okay, do you want to sync this? Do you not want to sync that? Do you have this sort of app? Do you not have that sort of app? So we're definitely on a rocket sled towards the September release, but there's still a lot of question, I think, again, based on what's available to the public right now, about how much is going to make it into the final release and how much is just going to be, let's roll back the tape, look at all the bullet points that we promised at WWDC, make sure we cover those things, and maybe we should have to table the hover pad concept until at least 2012.
Do we think that now it looks like in iOS 5 it does look like they have Nuance or something that would lead us to believe that that Apple has been, the Nuance partnership is bearing fruit. Clayton, how big of a deal do you think this is, that the speech recognition is for iOS 5?
Yeah, I think it's a big deal. I think it's obvious that all the other platforms have it, right? Windows Phone has it, Android has it, so it's catch up here, but it's catch up and beat, I think, because I think with Nuance you change the game. Right. Certainly Google has a voice capability, and they've been researching it and spending years using Google Voice. And
the problem is that Nuance has been spending decades doing it, right?
Right, exactly. So Nuance is the one. When I tweeted this earlier in the week, people said, "Oh, big deal, Windows Phone has it." And I said, "Do they have Nuance?"
Right.
Because do they have the infrastructure? I mean, you've been using it for years, right? I use Dragon Dictate on my desktop all the time.
I think I've been using Dragon since it was on the PC 12 years ago. I mean, and it's been around even longer than that. So, I mean, I think that is it's really the standard when it comes to this. And building up that library and building up all that test, work is not something. I think Apple tried to do it for a while. They did definitely experimented with speech recognition, but I think that Nuance is definitely the solution.
And it's a big deal. I mean, think about our lifestyles, right, and think about how much we are mobile. And I'm taking walks all the time with my headset on and listening to music. And if I just wanted to send someone a quick email, to be able to do that with voice recognition and actually use speech to text, but doing it well, where I'm not having to autocorrect and go back and correct 80 different words and fix all these. Then I'd much rather just sit down and type out an email.
Well, and they've been testing it for a while. It's been one of those things that we've. Have you been using at all the Dragon software that was for the iPhone?
Oh yeah, and I use that all the time. So
right.
I think you have like a 30-second window or a certain amount of time, and it's surprisingly accurate.
Yeah.
It does a great job, and certainly with the iPhone 4, when you've got the dual microphones, and so you have some of the noise canceling that works really well in the current version in iPhone 4. So yeah, they've already had the app out there. They've already been testing it for 3 years now.
Right. Andy, what do you think of do you think people are going to use it, or do you think is this something that's going to be really part of everybody's daily input?
This is an area where Apple really has to play catch up and exceed, as Clayton is talking about. The voice to text, voice input experience on an Android phone running the latest software is superlative. It works exactly the way a consumer would like this sort of stuff to work. Especially, and this is one of the few cases in which the dedicated search button, the dedicated buttons on the bottom of Android phones actually work out. Because if you have, I really think that an Android phone is the only phone it's so easy to operate via speech that you can actually operate it while driving without being distracted. Because just like I think nothing of reaching over to the iPhone in my car dock, not take my eyes off the road, holding on the home button and say call Igor Stravinsky via Google Voice. And not think that I'm going to be distracted. With Google Voice, you could simply say you simply hold it, reach for the search button without even looking, hold it down, you hear the beep beep beep. You say navigate to Mexican restaurant, and it will say back, here is a Mexican restaurant that's nearby. You tap one button and it simply finds it.
And do you think that this Nuance integration is going to work as well as what Android's doing?
Yes and no. The problem, another advantage that Google has with their implementation is that they include so much really killer stuff with the basic install. Google Maps navigation is as good as almost any commercial navigation app you can get, and it is hardwired for Google Voice, and it works really, really well.
Except that it's in the cloud.
If the integration of Nuance is that it's just an alternative to the keyboard, where I will still have to, if I'm using a navigation app, a third-party navigation app, I'll still have to sort of like pull over into the parking lot, tap a field, say 1313 Mockingbird Drive, then tap another one, Medfield, tap Massachusetts, right? Tap. That's I can type stuff like that. So if Apple has an emphatic way to make sure that it's easy for developers to make anything voice enabled, they'll be good. If it's just an alternative to the keyboard, it's okay, but not great. But
and I think that one of the problems, and I'm kind of curious to see how they handle it in iOS 5, is that Google's is, of course, their mapping software and everything else, and I believe all of their voice recognition is cloud-based. So when you're saying something that's going out to the cloud and back, well, I had a little trip on Sunday up the one, driving up with my daughter up the up the one, and yeah, there's not a lot of cell coverage in north of San Francisco, north of Petaluma on the one. And I had to go back. I was really glad that I had TomTom on my iPhone because I was like, okay, I don't know where to go now. And I kind of had gone up thinking, oh, it'll be fine, and suddenly realized that Google Maps was not particularly useful, once you get north of Jenner. So,
but it does work really, really well when you do have cell. To Andy's point, I mean, it's navigate to Igor Stravinsky's house. I want to watch him do a ballet, and boom, it knows right where, based on your contacts, it's going right there. And there's very little latency at all, at least in my experience.
Yeah. No,
also, you think about the situations in which you use that sort of thing, where realize that the penalty for not having, if it is cloud-based, if it does require a connection to the internet in order to get the processing work, the penalty for not having having access to the internet is that you actually type things on a keyboard. So it's not a case of, okay, well, I'm absolutely screwed because I can't give this phone commands unless I've got
right. Yeah. No, absolutely.
Also, why that whole point of being in Vermont is cutting off, not having access to anything, not using touch-tone telephones.
I just needed it. Well, and I do admit that it's a little geeky because, with my daughter, both of us have iPhones. And so the thing is that we get to the restaurant and we sat down and a couple seconds later, both of us are she's Facebooking and I'm text messaging.
Like, we have nothing else to talk about.
And the cat's in the cradle in the silver spoon.
Exactly. We talk most of the time, but I just noticed that there was a moment there where we had to, before we started talking, we were like, okay.
My Facebook photos.
Yeah, well, I was just like, before we started talking, we were like, okay, we'll catch up on this. Okay, Clayton, and now we're back to whatever we were doing. It was a very odd moment. It was a little bit of a cat's in the cradle. I'm going to leave now.
It really will change everything. I find myself that I now actually, even when I'm just like sitting in my office dialing the phone, I'm more likely just to hold down the home button and say, call Finkel.
I keep on trying to make the current Apple version work, but as we've talked about in the past, it hasn't been totally.
And the S's in Andy's contact list are amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
Shrinkle and Stravinsky.
Fivish Finkel. You don't know who Fivish Finkel is? Oh,
I know who Fivish Finkel is. Oh, I thought you said Schwinkle.
Now it's also coming with
right now and tell him that he does not have the love of Mr. Clayton.
Now I'm just going to cut that one off because I have no idea what you guys are talking about. You guys are in your own little world there. And so the Apple disabling iOS devices, Andy, you're going to have to kind of suss this out because I don't understand what this means. So Apple is disabling iOS 5 devices from people who have purchased UDIDs from other developers. So this is developers get access to they get slots for the UDIDs, so that they can do their testing with iOS 5. And I guess some of them have been making those available.
Yeah, they're as far as I know, there are 2 or 3 different reasons why someone might want to have apps run this way, and one of them is for piracy. One of them is so that you don't really have the right to run the software for one of any different reasons. You don't have the right to run the software, but this is a shortcut to running that software, shall we say. As to what the larger thing beyond that, I've been a little bit curious about that myself. My first reaction is, what do they have? What's going to be in the next beta that would cause this sort of system to break? But it seems to be sort of it seems an interesting timing because AT&T, I think, already did basically said that if you have jailbroken your phone to enable Wi-Fi hotspot sharing, which is in direct violation of the agreement you signed by having an account with AT&T, guess what? You just lost your unlimited data access. We are switching you back down to a tiered data plan, and there ain't boo you can do about it.
Well, and the thing is that people know that you're sharing that hotspot because they can see the multiple.
Right, but it's not entirely malicious, right? Andy points out one of many uses, right? One would be piracy. One would be, I have no reason to have this beta. I'm not a developer, so I'm putting it on my device based on my tablet's UDID. I send that to the guy. I pay him some cash over PayPal. He sends me, I send him my UDID number. He sends me the build. I install it. Boom, I'm up and running on iOS 5. But they're not always as malicious, right? I mean, there are other instances where you might not have a developer build. For instance, I'm working on an iPad app with a couple of friends, and I don't have a developer account. So therefore, if I need to look at and see the latest versions of what we're working on, through my UDID, I'm able to actually look at the latest build, and so it's not malicious. I'm not out there trying to pirate.
Right.
I'm not actually out there trying to pirate that.
But actually, it seems as though this specific action is based on people who are trying to sell access to the betas of iOS 5, which is double dumb stupid because anybody with $99 can get iOS 5.
But they were able to sell it for $25.
Yeah, but I mean...
But wait, I have a question, though, and it's not something that's being released in the next version of iOS 5 that would brick their device, right? They're Apple simply going through and noticing the UDID numbers out there that are floating around who have access to that same developer's account, and they're bricking those devices based on the UDID number, right? It's not a new build of iOS 5 that went out that bricked it.
What's happened apparently is I don't have direct knowledge. I can honestly say I have no direct knowledge of this, but what I've been told from other people is, and what I've read online since Thursday, is that it is a specific punitive action in which Apple has figured out who's selling, which developers are selling UDIDs for whatever stupid reason they want to sell UDIDs, that they have essentially slapped these guys pretty hard, and also that any device that is accessing iOS 5 with these UDIDs will no longer work. So it's not being bricked. It means that they can still downgrade back to the currently shipping version of iOS, and presumably they'll still be able to. If you bought one of these UDIDs, you can still have a working phone. It's just that the free lunch tray is now over.
No, and here's the question. Here's the question related to this: is it as Apple gets smarter about this, as AT&T is obviously getting smarter about this, of knowing who's jailbreaking and who's not jailbreaking, and as your whole world gets tied up more and more in the iCloud, process, is the golden era of jailbreaking kind of over? I mean, is it getting to a point where Apple's just going to kind of shut you out of a lot of those services if you're jailbreaking your phone? It seems like they're starting to get pretty refined.
I don't think so, because that would be a really overt gesture for Apple to make. Right now, Apple will not necessarily punish somebody for jailbreaking a phone. But
couldn't they just say, well, those services only work if you haven't jailbreaked it?
Their consistent stance has always been that if someone jailbreaks a phone, that means that there's a security vulnerability and we need to patch that vulnerability. Mm-hmm. They haven't simply said that anybody who has a jailbroken phone, we are going to send out the electromagnetic pulse wave that kills your device. It's only the people who are doing things that are naughty with a jailbroken phone that say, well, you know what, you agreed not to do this, you did this, we're exercising our right to terminate you. Right. But my only point here is that if Apple were to suddenly do something to simply say that we're going to make sure that it's not possible to even use a jailbroken phone on any network to have any access to any app updates, and that our operating system will fail if you don't have this working, to do something really extreme, I think would ruin the user experience, would make that phone less reliable for legitimate users. And also, you don't want to be seen as coming back with a steel foot on people's necks unnecessarily. And right now, jailbreaking is such a non-issue for so many people that.
And we don't even know what percentage of people are actually jailbreaking. I'm going to guess that it's far less than 1%.
I would even think, to answer your question about the golden days, I would even think that the App Store created the golden era of jailbreaking, pre App Store, post App Store.
Right.
I know a lot of people who used to jailbreak their phones before the App Store was around, and that they don't see any reason to anymore.
Well, I think one of the common places, where I see most jailbroken phones are in countries that aren't being supported by, that don't have access to the iPhone. So what they're that's the most common way the reason to jailbreak a phone that I've seen is, I work in a lot of African countries, and a lot of those aren't served officially, but there's a lot of iPhones there, and of course they're jailbreaking all of them to make all of that work. They've got this great one where you can just shake your phone and it'll answer. They don't have that for the regular iPhone. I don't really know why.
See, that would be a mistake, because I would be out taking a walk and I would not want to answer the phone. Mom's calling. Right. I'll talk to mom a little bit later.
No, it's great.
And I'm walking.
It's one of these. It's just like this, and then you pick it up and it's answering. I was like, I want that application, but it's only jailbroken.
You talk about the risks of knowing a little bit too much. I was like some operating system upgrade, and applied it, worked great. Like the second day I had it, I was just really. It was the iTunes app was really pissing me off, because I'd be driving along and it would keep changing songs to me in mid-song. I'm like, God dang it, do I have corrupted music files? Is it a buggy app? And it wasn't until the day later and lots of shouting at this inanimate object on my dashboard I realized that, every time I hit a bump, it shakes the phone and it thinks, he wants to shuffle to another song. At that point, it's
to shuffle.
What if I were to just take this and slide that to the off position? Okay, it seems so
No, there were
good.
so many people because that was a default setting, right? And I had a lot of people that were so frustrated. They'd get a new iPhone and they'd come to me, because I'm like default IT guy at Fox. They'd come to me, I love this phone, but God, every time I'm listening to music when I'm on a jog, it jumps to another song. Like I'm about to take this thing back.
Does Apple have a department of choosing the wrong default setting? Because when they chose that, gee, what do people want to use this big switch on the side for, of this big tablet device that people tend to read like holding in different angles? Should it be lock the screen so it doesn't rotate when I simply like go from a sitting up to sort of a leaning position? Or should it be mute these really puny little speakers that people really don't use to listen to at all anyway?
Right. So we've got Apple. We got a couple more things about Apple. MobileMe is going to be. They're going to start discontinuing sections. Also moving to the iCloud transition. But before we get to that, I just want to thank one of our sponsors. MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by GoToMeeting. GoToMeeting by Citrix. It's just a great way to really pull everybody together. We use GoToMeeting every week inside of. I know that Twit uses it here. We use it in the Pixel Core all the time. I mean, this is how we get together. We have people spread out all over the world, and even if we don't, I had a meeting only last week. It just was inconvenient to drive 45 minutes through San Francisco traffic to just have a meeting, and so we use GoToMeeting to do that. Now, here's the thing: you can share your screens. You of course have IP built in, which I guess I thought all of these companies had, but it is not the way. There's a lot of these meeting companies that don't have the IP built in, which makes it much less convenient. So GoToMeeting has all of these things. It also now has HD faces, and this may seem like a gimmick to be able to see people's faces, but if you're in a long meeting, looking at someone's screen while you're having an hour and a half meeting is a cure for insomnia. I mean, it is just, and believe me, we've done lots of those meetings. And so being able to actually see people, being able to, talk to them and see their face when they're not doing something on their screen is really key. And so now this is available with GoToMeeting, and, we're pretty excited about it. You can, of course, use it on the Mac or PC. And, whether you're doing product reviews, sales presentations, training sessions, weekly status meetings, all of that stuff is stuff that you can do right from your desk. You don't have to, you don't have to leave. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to, it's really the way to go. This is the future, and it's here now. And I'm so sold on GoToMeeting. It's something I think when they started doing a sponsor, we were just getting into it, and we use GoToMeeting. We also use GoToWebinar, which is a slightly bigger version of that, and it's just it's just a fantastic solution. So GoToMeeting, if you want to try a 30-day free trial, so you can get it for free, you can try it out, you can see how well it works for you. Go to GoToMeeting.com and use the offer code MacBreak. That's GoToMeeting.com and use the offer code MacBreak, and try the HD faces. Try calling some of your friends, some of your colleagues. It really, as soon as you start using it, I think you're going to have a hard time justifying getting into the car or the plane and the hotels and everything else that's required all the time. So check it out. GoToMeeting.com and use the offer code MacBreak. All right. So Apple is officially killing MobileMe Sync for keychains, widgets, account preferences. So all those things that we've been kind of using to tie all of our computers together, Apple is kind of cutting the cord there. Andy, are they doing it today? Is this something that we all have to worry about this week?
No, this is just stuff that more developer stuff. It's only come to light when when developers last week started updating to the new iOS and trying to use these new services. And according to screenshots you can see up on AppleInsider.com, you can see the walkthrough process that they go through. And part of that walkthrough process, these developers who are transitioning from mobile, or basically turning their MobileMe accounts into iCloud accounts, part of it is a big screen warning that says, oh, by the way, here is a list of the MobileMe features you're currently using that will not be available, and that includes the stuff that you talked about. So it's an interesting list. You could see why dashboard widgets and dock items might not make sense in an iCloud sort of situation. Keychains and mail accounts are kind of curious, I think, because that's part of the magic of upgrading to a new machine or switching from one machine to another. The fact that the passwords that I created on my desktop are going to work on my new MacBook Air, whether I'm just taking this thing out of the box right now or whether I'm just simply using it for the first time after signing on to this new account back at home.
Is it a security issue, or is it a?
There are two things. There are two things that make me wonder. One of them is that yes, it could be. Maybe it's a security issue because one other thing that's sort of common to all of these things is that they're basic things that kind of give people carte blanche access to a lot of the important things in your life. Another idea is that it's another theory, and this is underscored just a theory, is that it's possible we're just seeing sort of the leading edge of a new infrastructure for those services that hasn't been announced yet but is coming soon. And so they're recontextualizing the idea of how to sync passwords and accounts between multiple machines through the cloud. They've looked at keychain access and the old way that mail used to handle that sort of stuff and decided, no, if we have this really cool cloud system and they're running online, there's a much better way we can do this. We haven't finalized that. We're not ready to announce it yet, but we're not going to have people. We don't want to have people convert twice, so we're just going to cut off access starting next month. And then have something ready to go shortly after that. Now, Apple's done that before.
Can I ask you, is included in this is Safari and or bookmarks preferences and those sorts of things? I couldn't find that if that is included in it. Not that it's ever done a good job of syncing anyway.
Right.
So I actually hope this is an opportunity to clean this stuff up because, whether or not stuff shows up on one computer when I'm upgrading or I'm moving from one machine to another or I have multiple machines that I want to keep in sync, none of them look similar. And
I've been trying it. I mean, I've been trying to deal with the situation where I try to keep everything synced between, I have an 11-inch, a 17-inch, 11-inch of the Air, the 17-inch MacBook Pro, and then a tower at home, and I've been doing the best I can to try to keep them all. But I have the same problem that you have, which is that some of the stuff is making it there, some of it isn't. I've been trying to kind of figure out what it takes to make all of that work. I've gotten the mail mostly working, but it does seem to be kind of a hit or miss kind of process right now.
And I really can't get to the bottom of why Safari, why my bookmarks menu or why my bookmarks bar will look completely different from machine to machine on a regular basis.
Right. Yeah. So it's I think that it never really worked. So it looks like when I look at what they're discontinuing, I mean, you look at the discontinuing gallery, iDisk, iWeb, none of that really worked very well. So I think that it's kind of like, okay, we're going to cut some of our losses, figure out another way to do it. Keep the stuff that was really working or working fairly well. I have to admit that the address have the addresses worked for you? I have some computers with some addresses and some with others, and I sync all of them.
Multiple versions.
Yeah,
that's the worst. I mean, and I want to live in that. I want to have one simple ecosystem where I'm not having to rely on Google Calendars on top of this, and I want to have one place where I don't have to. I add an address on one device, and I expect it then to be on all my devices, and it's never there, or half of it is there. Just the email address managed to make it.
Right.
It's like, come on, little buddy. Why can't the phone number also make it in there? It's just.
Yeah. I think it's very telling that. Just yesterday, I was talking to somebody making a new appointment on my iPhone, and if it's a really important appointment, I will make the appointment on my iPhone. I will make sure I double check to make sure that I've submitted it properly. I will double check to make sure that when I go back to the calendar page, I can see that little pip and the date that says that yes, the iPhone believes that's there. But I will also take a screenshot of that appointment. So that I know that somewhere there is a copy of this that will not be deleted, will not be resynced, will not be overwritten by anything else, because this appointment, yes, is that important, and I trust syncing not 100%. Although to answer your original question, bookmarks are included as part of what iCloud is going to sync with. So essentially calendars, contacts, bookmarks. I'm looking at the screenshot again. Email addresses, right. So just calendars, contacts, and bookmarks are safe. The other ones have been sent off the island.
There we go. Now, jumping the track completely to another subject, Epic Games president suggests Apple, this is according to 9 to 5 Mac, the accidental gaming giant is obsoleting next gen consoles. Now, here's the real question I have about this: is it really an accidental gaming giant?
The headline. I mean, that's a.
It's like Apple just backed right into that. I remember seeing something on CNN one time where they were sitting there talking about how the military was taking advantage of GPS technology for their own uses, and I was like, that might have been backwards.
It's a complete accident that 2 months ago I had a meeting with Apple and a briefing with Apple specifically, and the only reason I was there was to look at third-party apps and games for the iOS platform. How that these certain games with AirPlay, having that family experience. This is really important to Apple. The fact that they would call it an accident is laughable.
Well, I mean, do you think that there's a real tie-in? I mean, so obviously, the only place I play games, actually, and most people I know, actually, when I think about how many people I know playing games, most of them are playing them on their iPhones, on their iPads. They're not playing. They don't have consoles. And I'm not saying that there's a lot of people out there with consoles. I mean, it's still a very, very big industry. It's just that it definitely seems like the casual gamer is a much larger market. But do you think that the integration or the coming integration with Apple TV, iPhones, and iPads really creates a whole new opportunity for what the gaming experience may look like? Because you now have, I mean, right now we're just sitting there using AirPlay, so we're taking our, playing Angry Birds on a HD monitor. But what if if all you could have 6 iPads in a living room all tied into playing a game on your Apple TV? That is projecting onto the, that's coming out of a TV, and all of those interfaces could be their own individual interfaces. I look at it like when I'm thinking about Marathon, Marathon being one of my favorite games, which is now on the iPad, but they don't have any kind of gameplay, and you can imagine having something that you could use both individually or as a group, to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's the article that's linked to the statement that they've made is all about how they're kind of wondering if Apple's going to come out with a game console. To which pretty much everybody in this room and everybody listening, their answer is they have a game console. It's called the Apple TV. It's been hidden all this time.
Right.
Apple really does make. I just realized that to compare something technological to a Trojan horse is probably going to go down not the way that I intended to, but that's often the way that they develop technology. Where here we have this thing called the Apple TV, and it lets you do Netflix, and it lets you play music, and it lets you also play videos right through your HD TV. But lurking inside the Apple TV is an iPad iOS device that can run almost any application that Apple deems to release to it. So. Yeah, I mean, if I'm the only problem, the only disconnect with mobile gaming is that it strips out a lot of the social aspect of gaming, which is what pulls so many people into these communities. And so without that one big screen in the middle of the room, the 5 people were not going to be in that room with their iPads and their iPhones. But you use the Apple TV as a hub between them, and it's really interesting to suss this problem for these game companies, because you know how long the development process is on these games. They have to start developing. It really is like a big budget Hollywood movie where they have to start planning today for a game they're going to release 3 years from now, and it is really very credible for them to start thinking: do we want to build an $8 million console game, not knowing whether or not consoles will still be at the top of the heap in 3 or 4 years, or should we just start right away doing iOS, assuming that sometime next year we will have a top secret meeting with Apple in which we will be sent home with an aluminum cased device that's glued to a big panel that doesn't allow us to take it out of a certain room because that's where they're taking gaming in the next 3 years.
Yeah, it's interesting the console. I mean, the console thing is interesting to me, at least from the gamers who are going off to college and they're relying on their Xbox for everything. In colleges, now we're seeing this trend on campuses where they're cutting cable as part of the dorm room packages, and many kids, are just taking their Xbox. They're using their Xbox because they can get ESPN on their Xbox, they can get Netflix on their Xbox, and then they can play with their college friends all those games in that live experience. So I think that social component is really important. I don't know that Apple has that tied up yet. And I also wonder if there's a bit of a limitation in the interface. I think very often we're seeing these first-person shooter games, and when you're using the accelerometer and the gyroscope, I think you're seeing some exciting things. But I don't know that it's there yet. I think that there's something to be said for having that controller in your hand and being able to manipulate and fire guns with that controller. So I don't know that it's all sussed out just yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it'll be interesting to see. I do think that it depends on the kind of gamer. I think the traditional gamer that's expecting to have the high, I think you're definitely seeing a much higher performance in a lot of these game consoles than what you're going to see with an Apple TV. It's just a matter of the kind of games that you're going to play and which ones will be the most popular, and the infrastructure. I mean, if every game developer I've talked to who actually develops, we have a lot of Pixel members that work in game companies, building for the Xbox and especially for the PS3 is not for the faint at heart as far as developing the rules of engagement to get it to work inside of that platform is pretty outrageous.
I have 2 call to arms right now. I'm going to put this out there because I need the audience's help to kind of drive this. Firefly Studios, makers of one of my all-time favorite games, Stronghold. I don't know if you remember this great PC game. Then they had Stronghold 2 and so forth. Please put this on the iPad. It is begging for you to make this. We have the tower defense category that exists now as a result of the iPad and the iPhone. This is calling out for one of the great castle games ever made. And it's not just a tower defense game, but I think I wasted 2 years of my life playing this game on a PC, and I'm begging for you to please put it down on the iPad because it's perfect for it. It's like having a board game in your lap, the ability to manipulate castles and things. And I just still don't think. I search the App Store on a regular basis for compelling games, and I just don't find them. Either the sort of the casual fun game. I want to waste the next 2 years of my life playing Stronghold on the iPad.
I don't know if I just don't. What I like is the fact that I'm not totally hooked. I mean, it's bad enough that I feel like my life is out of equilibrium when I don't have 3 stars on every Angry Birds level. So like the new level comes out, like a new set of levels come out, and I'm like, oh, it's like 4 days that I have to.
And I'm sure we have a lot of Star Trek fans in this audience too. Wouldn't this be? You go through the App Store, the Mac App Store, and you look at some of the Star Trek games in those top-down shooters, right? The top-down Star Trek shooters where you're controlling the Enterprise, zipping through asteroids, battling other starships. This device, the iPad, is ready-made for a top-down Star Trek game. Get on it.
Right. Andy, you were going to say?
No, I was just going to say that Penny Arcade, the webcomic, had a really great strip a few days ago, which the two leads are sort of arguing about gaming, saying consoles are never going to take over mobile devices are never going to take over from consoles. I mean, you don't want to play a game on your phone. I just got comparing like a really big epic game that you can get on console versus little, your game is about like popping balloons. And then the kicker is like the guy with the iPhone says, yeah, I'll tell you what, I'll take 50. You buy a $50 game, I'll buy 50 99-cent games. Let's see which one of us is still having fun a month from now. And that really is it.
Yeah, and I don't find very many games that I'm that excited about very often. It's just that the ones that I do find are painfully addicting. Now, one thing it doesn't look like we are going to see is any kind of iTunes quote unquote replay. It looks like this is still something that Apple is trying to move down the path, with cloud movies and being able to stream into it. And right now, it looks like the big holdup is HBO because it has a lot of its contracts and so on and so forth that are kind of tying up the market. Clayton, do you think it's really HBO that is holding back Apple from getting this process?
It's hard to say, but I think a lot of those content providers, they have license deals, right, that they lock up for a number of years, and it's probably very difficult in those times when they're locking up those deals to be forward-thinking and to think, now, how is the marketplace going to look 5 years from now? Can we bring in, let's call, one of the psychic ladies down the street and get on the 900 number and see if we can predict the digital experience 5 years from now to know that, we're going to have this dramatic shift from DVDs by mail to streaming movies by mail. So I think that HBO, though, has always historically had all of but it's been a big problem for a lot of those other premium cable providers, the Showtimes, the Stars, who have never been able to get those top tier movies because HBO always had them.
Well, and now isn't kind of that's how Netflix kind of got into this though, was making a deal with Stars. So that was, there was kind of a loophole in the way Star's contracts were about how it handled distribution. And so we saw a lot of when Netflix started doing its streaming, they were using, a lot of that, you could see the Stars open and everything else. Andy, do you think Apple's going to get a cloud service for streaming?
I think they're going to get it eventually because they know who they're competing against. They also know what cards they're already holding. There are cable companies that are looking at plans to throttle the bandwidth of their subscribers' access to Netflix. They're not really thinking about throttling their access to iTunes, and that really tells the whole tale, I think.
Right.
That's interesting, and I think that holds the key. I think Andy's right. And also I think that Apple probably is aware of what's missing from the Netflix experience, right? You have Amazon On Demand, but what's missing from that Netflix experience, the streaming experience anyway, is first-run movies. When I can go to the grocery store and I see in Redbox that the newest movies are out and available right there, The Hangover 2 is right there, then why can't I have access to it in a service that I'm paying $7.99 a month for? And instead I have to wait for the DVD to arrive, and Netflix simply doesn't have that. If iTunes can lock up that component maybe that's the golden ticket.
Now, do you think that eventually Apple decides to play the big card and purchase some of these companies to solve some of those issues? They've got the cash; they could purchase all of them if they wanted to. Do you think that they ever go down that path of just saying, okay, we're tired of waiting and now we're just going to buy Time Warner, or we're going to buy, not Time Warner, but buy some of these large movie companies for $7 billion, $10 billion. I mean, that barely shows up on Apple's, financials.
Yeah, I'm not sure that they would want everything that would come with the movie industry, movie business. All they really want is the catalog. They don't want all the executives and their $80,000 leather sofas that they have to have in their offices, and they never want to argue with Keanu Reeves about his deal for Bill and Ted 3, right? Either directly or indirectly. So I don't think
that would be a great argument. I would love to.
So we'll see how that turns out. Now, I thought this map was kind of interesting. This was from the unofficial Apple weblog. The map that shows states trending towards iOS versus Android. So evidently some states, of course, are more likely to get Android versus iOS. And here we have the breakdown. I don't know what to make of this. Of course, instead of being red states or blue states, they're still blue states. But are iOS users really blue users? I think that's really the question there. So what I thought was interesting were states that were trending for BlackBerry. I mean, I think some of them make sense. New York, Virginia. Obviously, those are good government business. Yeah. Of course, I was looking at South Dakota and North Dakota. I was like, really? So why is BlackBerry?
There's still two of those? Wow.
Exactly.
Well, this map
Kansas.
Merged.
Evidently, BlackBerry is also very, very popular in Kansas. So anyway, it's an interesting map to see. Now, I think some of them make sense. I think when you look at California being a little bit geekier, Pennsylvania, my alma mater, I think there's a lot of geeks there. There's a lot of research schools and so on and so forth. So I could see that trending one direction or another. But anyway, I thought that was kind of an interesting breakdown of now. Andy, do you think there is a certain personality that would go along with the state that would have someone go Android versus iOS, or do you think this is just kind of a random process?
I think this is kind of random. Realize that the thing that really puts all these colored states into relief is that if there is 1% more on one side than the other, that means that entire state gets colored in red or yellow or purple or whatever. It really doesn't say that, okay, well, I mean, there's pretty much a close approximation between the two. The one is a little bit more popular, but we'll never figure out why. Although I do think that the fact that the Virginia area is a BlackBerry stronghold, that's one state which you can say, okay, I can sort of see a correlation.
Well, and I'd love to see this per county. Like this is fine. I don't know how you do this per county, but I think that it's a much more interesting. Like I find that political maps are much more interesting when you see them per precinct, because it gives you a much more accurate view than just red, blue, or state or red state or blue state. So
and also it'd be interesting to lay it over a map of networks too, and to find out where network penetration is as well. I mean, looking at the Northeast corridor too, up through Vermont, where. I mean, I'm surprised you can get a cell signal up there. So that they have that AT&T, or at least now up till Verizon, but that mostly it was iOS through that region. I have to imagine it's probably not everyone that ran out and just picked up a Verizon iPhone in the past few months.
Right.
Also, we should never ignore the fact that for a great many people in the country, rushing out and spending $249 for an iPhone as opposed to a free with contract Android phone, that's a very big
That's a good point. They're not really doing it from a technological point. It's really more of a financial issue. Yeah. So now Bloomberg they have posted a hypothetical iPhone 5 with 512 megabytes of RAM. So they this is what I call getting serious. Andy's
what a scoop. We got the first one with details about the iPhone 5 that we hypothetically made up.
I have a hypothetical post also coming out. It has 1,000 different features. You're not going to believe this.
It works great in your head. Is that the
Yeah, it works fantastic in my head.
Right. Yeah. So so here's the breakdown here. iPhone 5 their guess is if it goes down this path, and they included, of course, in this hypothetical. Not only is it hypothetical, but they have shipping, packaging, logistics, manufacturing, testing costs, and a lot of these are, they're using some kind of. There's a table there that somebody's using. They've got a table. I know they have
those specials on the History Channel where what if the Nazis got the atomic bomb and they won World War II? We think that the 2012 presidential election would go something like this.
So if you're wondering what the hypothetical cost of a hypothetical phone is, $270.10, which is probably, Apple, there have been a lot of estimates of cost in the past that have put the iPhone, anywhere from $250 to $350. So they're probably somewhere in the ballpark of what that is. Now, is that a lot of margin, or is that pretty average margin, Andy? Do you think that that's a reasonable margin, or do you think that Apple has the ability, if they want to make it less expensive?
I think historically Apple they've always figured out what is the price that we need to charge for this product, what price is the market going to bear, and then they do every subsequent release based around that price. And this affects iPhone, this affects desktop Macs, this affects mobile Macs. They will never create a $799 MacBook. They will always create a $999 MacBook that's better than the one they sold last year for $999.
Yeah. So we'll see how that turns out. Coming up next, we're going to be talking about Lion and lawsuits. Coming right, there's a lot of both on the way, unfortunately and unfortunately. But before we get to that, we're going to thank one of our sponsors. This episode of MacBreak Weekly is also brought to you by Carbonite. This is, the reality is that you really have to make sure that your files are not only in your on your computer, especially just on your computer. But even if you're going to back them up to a drive, what happens if you have if someone breaks in? What happens if you have water damage or fire damage? These are the things. These are oftentimes your family photos, your family videos, and I know that it's a priority for me when it comes down to those photos that I shot over the last weekend. Literally within minutes, I've got it off my computer, and definitely within a day, I've got them off my computer and into the cloud somewhere, because it's something that I need to, I just don't trust it to only be on my home computer, and that's what Carbonite does for you. It, of course, it's safe. Your files are encrypted before they leave the computer, so you're not, no one's picking up the stream on the way out. It's easy to use. You don't have to be an expert. You just turn it on and make it work. It's automatic, so you can make sure that you can, just set up the process. You set up, this is how I want it to work. This is how often I want it to work, and you can make it. It'll start doing that automatically, so you don't have to think about it, because it's not a backup process if you have to remember to do it. If you have to do it manually, that's not really a backup process. It has to be something that is just happening in the background. And of course, you can get your files back in just a couple a few clicks. And because you're off-site now, any computer that you have, you can get those files. So not only are they safer, but they're easier to get to. So if you need to get to those files and you're somewhere else away from your computer, those most important files are still available to you on any computer that you can log into. Now, you can get this unlimited backup for your PC or Mac for only $59 a year. That's 16 cents a day. So anything on that computer, you're going to be able to back up automatically, and it doesn't matter how big it is. So definitely check that out. So you can try it for free if you go to Carbonite.com and enter the offer code MacBreak. You can go ahead and give it a shot, put stuff up there, see whether it works for you, whether it's easy enough for you to actually get it working. I think you're going to find that it's pretty darn easy. You don't need a credit card for the free trial, so you can sign up and you can get a free trial for 2 months. So go to Carbonite.com and then use the offer code MacBreak to try it out and see if Carbonite is the one for you. But whether they're the one or not, you have to get on the cloud. And I would definitely suggest spending 2 months seeing if Carbonite is the right one for you. All right, so now we have Lion. NVIDIA drivers are blowing up, evidently, on 2010 MacBook Pro owners. Andy, is this something people should pay attention to before they upgrade to Lion?
Yeah, absolutely. If anybody who has NVIDIA graphics on their Macs should definitely pay attention to this. Not only for MacBooks but also for iMacs, because the support forums started to fill up with, hey, every time I play a YouTube video, my system completely locks up. And those reports started hitting exactly the date that Lion started becoming available.
Now, so one thing I will say is that I saw that, and I actually, I'm actually having that lockup problem on YouTube without Lion, on computers that I haven't upgraded. There's something going on in that process that I don't think is completely connected to Lion.
But there's either an update that's been made to Flash. There's either a change that's been made to the driver. There's something going on. I've only seen a couple of different workarounds, and the only one that's worthwhile is go back to Snow Leopard until this whole thing cools down. There are a couple command line things that someone has dug up that seems to have mitigated it a little bit, but none of them are as good as just simply saying, okay, there's an issue with this model of graphics hardware, so definitely downgrade.
And these are some they're pretty serious. It's not just YouTube not working very well. We're talking about kernel panics, the screen suddenly going black, and the inability to wake from sleep, which, interestingly enough, was an early problem in Snow Leopard as well. This was not, I mean, a lot of these machines, it seems like this is an old bug that somehow repropagated itself.
What was interesting, too, is that a lot of people were complaining that this was in the developer builds, and people were seeing that on those machines as it was coming out, and they assumed rather erroneously, I guess, that this would be cleaned up in time when it actually shipped. It hasn't. And, of course, according to this piece, at least in Ars Technica, there's an update in the Apple Care support. Well, one of the technicians has said that one of the workarounds is to go to the library preferences and delete any files that have Windows Server in there, and then reboot the machine. And apparently that's supposed to fix it. I know someone who had this happen and did that, and it worked. So I don't know that that's a good way to fix it across the board, especially if this is a problem with, if it was there and before we ever saw a line and it was in Snow Leopard.
Right. Yeah. So it's interesting to see. We'll see how that turns out. I know that this is just a reminder that it is always a good idea to upgrade slowly. I know that I have a couple machines that have Lion on it that we're noodling with, and it's awesome, and we're really enjoying it. But it's not something that we're putting on every machine all at once. And it's this kind of stuff that we just went, well, we'll just kind of dip our toe in. Just because Apple has upgraded, it doesn't mean that you have to dive into it and upgrade it on all your machines. I think you want to be kind of careful and let a lot of the stuff sort itself out before you necessarily jump in. So now, if you are upgrading, one of the things that people have complained about is that because you're downloading it on the App Store, that there's no way to get that USB key. Now, it turns out that Apple has been saying that they've been giving, or there's been talk about them giving away USB keys for this, but it turns out they've just released this week, I think yesterday, Apple's Lion Recovery Disk Assistant, which will allow you to create a recovery partition on an external drive in the case that you might have a crash. Andy, have you tried this?
Yep, I tried it. I created a USB. It's great because it works on external drives. It works on USB keys. It'll work on pretty much anything. I've got, as all three of us know, that you get all these press releases and stuff on USB keys now. They're 1 gigabyte. And so now I just simply went into my kitchen drawer, got one of these 700 out there, and quickly converted it into a bootable partition.
How big does it have to be?
Only 1 gigabyte. Doesn't have to be the full whack 6 gigabyte line install. The only thing I haven't tried, only because I haven't gotten around to it yet, is to see if you can install it on an SD card. I'm not sure if there'd be any impediment to that working. I know that you can boot off of an SD card if it's big enough. So I just haven't gotten around to trying it yet. But yeah, it works just fine. Just you reboot just exactly the same way you would in any other case. This is definitely, though, a very much of a worst case scenario, because the only reason why you would ever actually need this would be if you actually had physical damage to your hard drive that took the whole drive out. Also, if you have the newest Macs, like the newest MacBook Airs, Apple does have a NetBoot option where you can actually mount a recovery partition from Apple servers over Wi-Fi. That was a third option that's only available on the new Macs and presumably future Macs after that. People have been clamoring for this. I'm glad they have it now.
And there was a kind of a crazy workaround that you could go in and, if you wanted to get your Lion partition, there was this kind of way to get it installed but not install it and get a hold of that file and put it somewhere else. And this kind of eliminates a lot of that, or is it just another process? You still might want to get that whole installer out.
Right. There are a couple of problems with that workaround. One, that it was a much bigger file than 1 gigabyte. Secondly, it was that DMG file, that secret DMG file, I believe, was only in the installer file that will disappear as soon as the installation was done. So you had sort of a narrow window to make it. This one is you download this app at your leisure. You go through a discrete number of very simple steps. You just plug in any drive, and it simply works. The only real disadvantage is that you can't take, like, if you've got an external hard drive you've been using just as like an Aperture or an iPhoto photo library when you travel, you can't just simply say, oh, that's great, I'll just now drop a recovery partition on there, so it will be not only for my photo storage, it'll also be my recovery drive. That's not going to work, because the first thing it does is it wipes out the external drive. So clearly this is targeted towards USB keys and not towards a way to resource that 500 gigabyte hard drive that you took out of your old machine a year ago.
Now, I will say that this is actually one of the first things that I would do. I mean, I always have some way that I'm going to be able to reboot. Whether it's upgrading to Lion or anything else, you always should have this in your bag as some way to, because it's not just if there's physical damage, but if for some reason you toast your something that it's using to do a restart, and you need to go back and look at that drive, or do something to clean up, use the disk utility or whatever to clean it up so that it can restart again if it can't find the drive.
Because think about the worst case scenarios which do happen. Again, I mentioned this a few times over the past couple of years. That first day of Macworld Expo 1 week, I totally toasted my hard drive.
I was there.
Yep, exactly. And I was able to get a machine up and running later that day by virtue of the fact that I was able to run across the street, buy a hard drive. Yep. I was able to locate friends. Scott Bourne was able to find me a copy of the OS. I was able to grab copies of this and that. God bless living in 2011 and having a Mac. If you have this little USB key, I'll still have to run out and buy myself a hard drive, but it means that I first boot off the USB key, and then that will get my machine bootable. That will get me connected to the App Store. That will get me a new download of Lion, which will get me a new download of all the apps I've ever purchased. And although my documents, I'm still going to have to connect to Dropbox to get those, but the idea of getting an up and running machine that has all the services that I used to have before I did that silly thing, such as try to drag my Mac towards me on a table while it was still booting up. I can have things up and running again. So
this is like living on the Oregon Trail. Dysentery. You never know what you're going to find out there on the trail.
Yeah, exactly. So,
well, especially with SSD being more common, much more common now in a lot of the Macs, obviously, in the new Airs and even the iMacs, and having the operating system booting off of the SSD, very little risk. Like to Andy's point about being a worst case scenario, I didn't even bother. I mean, I upgraded my iMac, had no problems, and then had less of a fear about just upgrading my MacBook Air. Worked flawlessly. So
I have to admit, even if I have a smaller hard drive in my laptop, I between my Air and my 17, it's still got the spinning drive, and when it starts up, it's just like, are you kidding me? Just like I just feel like I'm just sitting there. I'm like, I'm gonna go have a cup of coffee. I'm gonna go to Starbucks and back. I mean, it's just gonna be it's gonna take that long for it to settle down, because it's gonna start up, and then it's gonna slowly start putting these other things in, opening these other things up, and I'm gonna listen to the little hard drive spinning around, and nothing's gonna work right until they say it's a minute and a half or whatever, but it's really like 4 or 5 minutes before it's really usable. And with your go ahead.
Do you think the mechanical hard drive is a lot like the rotary telephone? It's going to be one of those dividing lines between generations. Wow, you mean that you actually had to stop and wait for a light to go to sleep before it was safe to?
Yeah.
Wow.
So get this.
Why?
Yeah, they used to have the data on these things that would actually spin. It was a crazy experience, and they'd spin really, really fast, and you sometimes pay more because they spun faster than the other ones. And
and there used to be a woman at a call center that was attractive that used to plug in the different phone to the. Yes, I'd like to reach K19, please.
Yes, exactly.
All right, we'll take. There you go.
And they were both very popular in the last century. So
you go all over LA on the red car for a nickel.
So moving into the future, Skype 5.3 has just been released with Lion support and HD video calls. Have either of you tried HD video calls?
No way in hell. I'm still.
Now you can have
I'm still running Skype
720p definition.
I'm still running. I'm so scared of upgrading Skype on any of my machines. I just don't do it anymore. I mean, I quickly close out of those windows when there's an update. I say, don't remind me again about an update. I had to downgrade. I have one PC that I record when we do our Daddy on Board show. Because I need VOD burner to be able to record video calls, and that's the only. And I had to downgrade back to 4.2. I got 5 off of all my machines because it was just terrible, and I'm not upgrading anytime soon. So I'm still running Skype 4.2 on all my machines, and I don't plan on upgrading anytime soon.
I'm still on 2.8 on this machine.
And it's hard to go back. I mean, so the 5.0 and above have really been a big step back. But once we've had trouble integrating with people who like if everyone isn't on some of the group calls that we've done, we've had trouble getting everybody in. Like if a 2.8 comes in, it actually limits the number of people, it seems, that you can log into.
So sure, the 2.8s have to ruin it for everyone.
No, but I mean, it's forcing people to basically upgrade, and so to get some of our other shows recorded. See, because like Twit doesn't have this problem because it's a different machine for everyone. But we've been doing ones where we have a big group discussion. And when we did that, it just wouldn't, and it doesn't give you a warning. It just didn't do anything. It doesn't work. And then what we did is upgraded them all to 5 point whatever, and it was horrible, but it actually worked, and we had to pay for it to get video. If you want more than 2 people on video, you have to pay for it now. We downloaded 5.3 today. One of the new things about it is this is in Snow Leopard. This is not in Lion. But one of the new things is it can now see our AJA card. So it used to be when we wanted to use our high-end video cards, we had to open it up in a viewer, and then we had to use a little thing called Cam Twist to see the viewer and then pass it on to Skype. And what I will say is that in the new one, we had a drop-down menu that just had all the AJA inputs for our inputs. So we have a Kona card in one of our machines, and we were doing it this morning actually, and we were all excited. We thought, oh, we're going to get HD. No, it's not. It just squeezed it. There's some kind of bug in 5.3 there where it's not. It's basically grabbing onto those video cards before whatever settings you set for the video cards, and so it's definitely a step in that direction, which is going to make our job easier. So for us, it's worth upgrading. If you haven't missed it, man, I wouldn't bother. I find Skype 5 to be painful.
Have they fixed any of the throttling? I mean, what they were doing was you'd have a high definition video, you'd have somebody would be in widescreen, then right in the mid call, somebody would be shifting back to 4.3, then jumping back to 16.9 or whatever it was, jumping back and forth in the middle of the call on a regular basis. So it made recording, or doing those things unusable.
Yeah, I haven't seen that yet. So we haven't gotten it working yet for the with the HD yet on our computer. So we'll have to see how that goes. Andy, have you played with the new Skype at all?
Not. It's Skype. See, Skype is the app that every time I use it, it has to work. It's the difference between starting within 15 minutes of the time that I agreed to talk to somebody and starting within some time that day.
Right.
So I do have the new Skype on other machines. It works. I'm sorry, rather the previous version of this one on machines. It works fine, but on this machine right here, and given that I'm in like a room that's designed to be a studio just for podcasting and just for videos and just for Skype, it's like here's the decision tree. Is this version of Skype working? Yes. End of decision tree.
Right.
We do not upgrade. It's working.
Right. And isn't that their problem? I mean, that's one of the Skype's problems, is they're trying to get everyone to move up, but no one wants to because A, they ruined the interface, and B, they started charging for some of the stuff we were getting for free, and C, it doesn't really work that well. So anyway, not that we're bitter about.
Not that we're. I just hate that. I still hate the fact that I don't regard myself as an unusually dumb person. I'm not a smart person, but I'm not an unusually dumb person. And when over my headphones I hear somebody in the UK that I'm supposed to be talking to say, okay, now just send us video, and there's just me like looking at the screen like, okay, well I pushed. No, I don't push that. It's on this. No, it's not on that menu there. Well, it can't be this button here. No, it's not that button.
Well, and I have to admit, the worst part for this is that for a long time I was like, it's free. What are you going to do? And as soon as they forced me to put money down on it, doesn't matter how much, but as soon as I had to give them a credit card, now I'm much more edgy about it. Okay, so I'm paying for this, and it doesn't work very well. And it doesn't matter how much they charge. That was the mistake. Is going to something that it doesn't work and then charging people for it. So now we have to get into these. This is the weekly. We need to create some kind of little. Dun, which is the lawsuits. There's always a lawsuit. Apple suing somebody.
No, because even that sound effect is too exciting for this.
Yes, exactly. It's like, oh.
I need to have Robert Vaughn do the intro. Did you write a piece of software? Are you being hassled by lawyers? Don't let the settlement people push you around.
Exactly. So,
have you been injured in an accident?
Call Morgan and Falstaff.
Well, and here's the craziness. So we have in 1999. So this is a lawsuit. This is a new one around fast booting in OS 10. So it's the method that Apple is using or is purportedly using to boot up quickly. Was originally this process was originally filed back in 1999 by LG. But LG doesn't own this patent anymore. They passed that patent off to Microconnect LLC, which has then passed this patent off to Operating System Solutions, OSS, which is probably can be at this point called a patent troll. And these guys are now suing Apple for this to see if they can't to cash in. Clayton, do you think that this is going to go anywhere?
I don't know. I mean, isn't it the tit for tat back and forth that we constantly see with these things? I don't know if you happen to see Mark Cuban's post the other day over on his on Blog Maverick, his actual his blog, where he was when he's talking about getting rid of an end to all of this software patent problems. Don't make them shorter, just eliminate them altogether, and try to cut down on some of the courtroom costs associated with the process and all of this.
But don't you think in some ways it could be to me, I understand someone who is developing a process, they've developed an idea, and they should have some level of protection so they can take advantage of that. I mean, that's what the patent system is around. But the question is whether people who aren't using the patent should be allowed. In my opinion, the big thing, the mess that's being made right now, I mean, I understand Apple suing Samsung or Samsung suing Apple or Nokia getting money from Apple, right, because these are patents from a company that's actually using that technology. They patented it for their own use. Someone else is using it, and they're saying, hey, we wanted, this was our right to do that. I think it's a completely different thing to have companies that are simply buying up patents and suing people for them. I mean, does that? I mean,
yeah, I think you're right about that.
Really,
exactly. You can show somebody, you can say, hey, we're actually using this. We're using it on a consistent basis. This is what's making our company better. We're making money because we're using this particular process that we came up with. But I think, Mark Cuban's point is, look, that's not how companies get better, right? That companies get better not because they're just holding on to these processes. You can't just create this process and sit back with a cigar up in the recliner and, I'm just sitting on this process while we're not even using it. We're just sitting here and we're trying to get patents so that other people can't use them. Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So that's and Andy, do you think this LG is going to go this fast start? Now the other thing is, I don't know when they actually were awarded it. They filed it back in 1999. So it's kind of midway through its progression as a patent. Do you think that do you think Apple's just going to end up settling? Send them a check.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to speculate, but when it comes to legal matters, I feel as though I don't even know enough to speculate. It really does make me sad that I've got that little database of people that I call when I don't understand something, but this person works in this sort of field time and time again, and it just depresses me that I have 2 or 3 names now of people who work in IP who know about who either work in this sort of field or they're intrinsically. They got money in this, so to speak, and so they have to know about it. And that there are times when it's sort of like the first time a news guy has to know that. Okay, so now I have to learn. I'm expected to know about what 3 common household chemicals can be used to make a poison that can kill 10,000 people in a subway. God bless living in the future.
Right, yeah. So now Apple is also trying to step in on the LoadSys case. And so LoadSys, of course, is trying to keep Apple out of it. So Apple is trying to intervene and say, you should be having this argument with us. And that's like that's like a kid bullying the 7th grader is bullying the 6th graders, and then I
realize that
then the senior walks in.
Friend.
Yeah, the 12th grader friend comes in and goes, actually, if you're bothering them, you should be talking to me. And they're like, no, we shouldn't really be talking to you. We should still stick with the 6th graders. And so Apple is saying, no, we should be part of this. We should be able to intervene. This should be a conversation between LoadSys. We've already licensed this. LoadSys is trying to keep them out. This, I guess we're going to find out more in the next week or two. Clayton, do you think that LoadSys is going to be able to keep Apple out of this conversation?
I don't think so at all. I think they were emphatic during WWDC that it was exactly what you were saying. Hey, come on, pick on someone your own size,
right.
And by your own size, you're not going to find it. But we're much bigger than you, so come talk to us. So there's no way that they're going to stay out of this conversation. I think they've already been emphatic about it.
Well, and this is not one that Apple's going to settle either. This is one of those ones that I would guess that the legal team is going to want to make a point out of this one and really push into LoadSys pretty hard.
Yeah, and also that I think the small developers' biggest friend at this point is not necessarily Apple, but it's the large developers who have made public rumblings that said that, look, we're not going to bother investing millions in developing this app if that only is going to make us a target for these patent trolls. I think that Apple already had an interest in defending developers against loads, but when it started to become this is going to make our platform less attractive to develop for, that really kicked it way up the food chain and turned it into a, well, let's see if we can find a solution to this. Is okay. Remember that scene from Lord of the Rings where all the trolls had armor fused to their bodies? We're going to be doing that only with lawyers.
Right. So we'll see. We'll see how it turns out. And as I said, my whole thing is that I think that if people are suing people over patents, I think it's fine for Nokia to sue Apple for patents. My thing that irritates me the most is dealing with companies that their only job is to sue people for patents.
Yeah.
That's the patent troll process. That I think is so annoying.
That's what my friends have been telling me, that there in any industry there are always those seminars weekend seminars you can take at the Hilton that will teach you, well, there's this new way of doing a facelift that involves minimal surgery and this new sort of wire that you can only get in Albania. There are also now in the legal profession, here's the weekend seminar on how to become a patent troll. It's very, very lucrative. Literally it's like it's like any other business where if you know that you can go to Asia, buy these devices for $43 each, take them back to America and sell them for $130 each, you can not only make money on that, you can also make money teaching people where to buy them, how to run the business. And there are people who are running the business saying, well, here's how you can expect to get cool. It's an easy $3,000 settlement. Yes, it costs you a lot of money if they go to court, but you can always make sure that you position it so it will never be attractive, and you'll.
Well, and eventually this is the end of. This is the end of the patent system as we know it, because as this continues to propagate, they will have to it's a virus. And so the thing is that they'll have to deal with it.
Yeah, you hear word on out of the White House, you hear that that's something that they're considering doing, of course. But also, as soon as you see, and to Andy's point, if you start to see Don Lepre doing overnight infomercials on how you can take out tiny classified ads,
then you're there.
Right.
You've reached the mass market. Now we've got.
I have a nice boat. Do you want one just like it? Take my seminar.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Clayton, do you have your pick for the week?
I do.
Okay, hold on. You're not.
Ones, yeah.
Okay, we got one coming towards you. I'm just warning you that we're coming your direction soon. We've got a tip for the week from Andy and I. We're going to do some Lion and iOS tips, and then we'll do picks of the week. But before we get there, we're going to thank our sponsor, Smile Software, or from Smile, and this is TextExpander. Andy, do you use TextExpander?
Yes, I do, and I've been using it actually now on iOS as well as on the desktop. I sort of switched over when I realized how valuable it is to not only just use it for, okay, I will read this and get back to you later when I have more time. Sincerely yours, your close personal friend, Ihnatko.
Right.
It's actually, when I realized that, that means that when I'm doing markup, I can just I keep forgetting like the code that I need to insert to format an image properly in my WordPress. Okay, so if I just put it in TextExpander, all I have to do is remember these 4 keystrokes, and it'll be formatted correctly.
Right, and of course, Smile makes a lot of software. They make PDF Pen, PDF Pen Pro, but they also make TextExpander, which I use all the time for, like, for instance, if I'm doing, if I want to review a product, or I want, there's this, hi, I'd like to review your product, and then I type in this little code, and it goes, my name is Alex Lindsay, and this is what I've done, and this, like this. There's this whole little thing.
That one kind of terrifies me, because the first time that I get a reply back saying, hi, yeah, actually, we do a network service. We don't have actual hardware, so we can't ship you anything. Damn it, I'm sorry. I've been caught using a boilerplate. I'm sorry. I don't deserve to live.
It's just the bio
information. I try to work at a higher level than this. It's so hard.
It's just a bio. It's a bio information. The basic stuff, and that is there. And then, of course, people, when I send out links to stuff, so for instance, my FTP, there's certain links that all have to come before whatever the name is, and so now I just type in a code, it pops out the entire string, so I don't have to remember it, and then I just type in the last little file name. If I'm sending out responses, those types of things are definitely things that I like to start them with that. I then customize them, of course, but the ability to handle all the signatures, put emails in, stuff that you have to put in that's standard, but you don't necessarily want to put it in the footer of your email. But you can also, of course, use this in lots of different places. You can use it in documents. You want to add your address to certain things, and you just want to have a short, little code that you can type in and have it all pop in. That's how TextExpander works, and it's just, once you have it on your computer, I don't really customize my software on my computers very often, because I'm afraid I'll go to another computer and it won't be there, and then I'll be sad. And so I don't do that very often, but TextExpander is definitely one of the ones that I add to just about everything that I'm using, because it just really takes hours out of the week as you start if you have to send out a lot of emails. And so it just fills those all in. You can have text, graphics, all of those things can be added there. You can use even stuff like tab, return, enter for your snippets. And so you can even they have a support where you can actually run AppleScript and shell scripts. Now, I haven't gone that geeky yet, but I definitely want to check that out. And of course, you can use you can have Dropbox support is built in, so you can use Dropbox to sync your snippets between your Mac. And they have new hotkey options for quickly creating, editing, and finding snippets. So definitely check it out. It is $35, and you can get a free demo at smilesoftware.com/MacBreak. So what you want to do is go to smilesoftware.com/MacBreak, and you can download this or many other demo versions of what they have there to try it out. And it is really, and I think Don McAllister, if you go up to, I think he actually did the screencast for TextExpander. But it really is one of those things that you can squeeze out a lot of extra minutes. I know we're always trying to squeeze that out, and TextExpander is a great way to do it. And once again, smilesoftware.com/MacBreak. And now it's time for our tips of the week. Andy, do you have a lion tip for the week, other than always look them straight in the face? That's the thing with lions, that's what I hear, is that you just don't turn your back to them, and that's my lion tip for the.
Well, because their feelings are hurt. They'll figure that, well, geez, was it something that I said? And then it will lead to what happens after that? Low self-esteem, and then what happened? Some sort of eating disorder.
Well, it's funny. I was talking to a guy. I was actually talking to a guy in Tanzania, and he said, just always face the lion and put your hands up, because if you feel bigger, they won't attack you. And I said, what if there's two lions? And he goes, you're dead. so that's my line tip for the week, but I'm sure that Andy has one that's probably more specific to our show.
Yes, there's a really cool little tweak they've done that Apple's done to window resizing. You already know that if you want to resize a window, now every single edge is now essentially a grab bar to resize a window. If you move your pointer to one of the corners of the window, you'll see it'll change into an arrow showing you how you can now make this shorter on the top edge, or now you can make this actually narrow on this edge or narrow on this edge. I think you can figure out what happens on the bottom one, but I don't need to go into that right now. But there's an actual nice little tweak. If you hold down the Option key while you do it, that's a modification, so that it will say, yes, you will change the height of this window, but it will change the height centered around the current center of the window. So if you if you drag it down, it won't just move the top down, it will also move the bottom up, so the entire thing will resize based on where you are. Same thing for the sides. You'll basically be moving the left and the right side in. And as you might guess, if you click into one of the corners, it will shrink down the entire window once again, both dimensions centered around where it is right now.
Well, and that's one of the things that's really useful, because a lot of times what happens is you go from a big screen to a little screen, and one of your windows is way too big, and you can't actually find any of the edges.
Yeah. And there's actually sort of an associated tip with Safari that, man, I wish this applied to every single app. We all love the full screen version of these Lion apps. We get to just sort of focus on this one document everywhere. One problem, though, is that sometimes in Safari, for instance, you'll have a web page, and now instead of this nice, tidy little narrow column that's easy to read, now it fills the entire dimensions of your screen. In Safari, you'll notice that if you mouse to the very edge of the screen and click, you can actually drag to resize the size of the fake window that it's in. So now the margins of that full screen are now going to be a little bit narrower, so which might make things a little bit easier to manage. And as soon as I came across this, I thought, oh, wow, I bet that's such a useful thing that I bet that Apple put that into every single app. No, that doesn't work. And okay, well, I bet that they put that into all of their iWork apps. No, it doesn't even work in Pages. So I really wish that's something that would cross over. I use Pages often in full screen mode, but there's just that little bit of OCD that says, if that paper were about 1 inch narrower, I would be the happiest boy in all of Puppet Land.
You just need to see that border, that little edge.
It's just a little bit too wide. Can I make a little bit narrower, please? But you can't do that.
Not yet.
But it works in Safari, but not platform-wide.
Hopefully we'll see it propagate. My tip of the week is mostly dealing with power saving. So one of the things that I spend a lot of time doing is, and I think it's mostly knowing when your iOS, what is burning up your iOS power, and how you can try to keep it lasting a little longer, and how you don't get surprised by the fact that you had a lot of power and suddenly you don't. So one of the things that you can do, the first thing to do if you want your battery to last for a long time is to double-click and make sure that Skype is not running on your iOS device. And the reason is now I use Skype actually a fair bit on my iPhone and my iPad, but the problem is that for whatever it's doing to constantly check the network to make sure that someone can call you, burns through your battery very, very fast. And if you leave Skype running all day, I've noticed that my battery can run out 2 to 3 times faster than normally. With just sitting there not being used, it really has a massive impact on your battery life, and so making sure to turn that off. Anything that has a lot of background processes, it's not a bad idea if you're going on a trip to restart just so you don't have to think about it. Just restart your iOS device if you want to make sure that it's going to last as long as it can, because you can go through and by hand turn off all the background processes, but some of them, especially ones that are chatting with the network, are going to be using up that using that data up or using the battery up to get a hold of that network. Network is the big thing that I find that is affecting your iOS battery length. And so the other thing to do, it's not so much talking to some engineers, it's not actually being connected to a 3G network or being connected to Wi-Fi that burns up the battery. It's looking for it. So if you don't have a solid Wi-Fi connection, or if you have like one bar that's constantly coming on and off, also if you don't have a solid phone connection, that's the time when the phone goes into overdrive to sit there and find the networks. It's trying to find the Wi-Fi network. It's trying to find the 3G network. And so those are the things that you want to, if you're not getting a good connection and you want it to last longer, one of the things to do is to turn off your Wi-Fi and possibly put it on airplane mode if you don't need to get a call, and you're trying to make it hang. If you've got 9% left and you don't have a charger and you're still driving and you still like to be able to turn it and you use it to some degree, but you want to make sure that it survives without completely turning off the phone. One of the things that you want to do is go ahead and make sure to turn off Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi will, if you're not using the Wi-Fi, the problem is that if you leave it on and you're not really using it, it's constantly looking and it's constantly picking up Wi-Fi accounts. And that's using up your battery. And 3G, the number one reason to turn off your phone on a plane is not because it's going to do anything to the plane, because it's not going to do anything to the plane. That's just silly. The main reason is that if you go on a 5-hour flight, when you land, you'll have 80% of your battery is gone because it's been sitting there in your pocket. By the way, and if anyone who's paranoid about getting cancer, your phone has been sitting there in your pocket using the maximum amount of wireless bandwidth that it can, trying to find something for 5 hours. And so if you have any paranoia about cancer in a phone, you should worry about that. And that's directly from a cell phone engineer. Said that's the number one reason to turn it off, was that it burns up your battery and it emits this 3-foot sphere of massive energy while it's looking. Anytime it doesn't have a connection.
Yeah. Now, when I go to New York, the first thing I do when I hit Penn Station is to switch from 3G to Edge, for almost exactly that reason, because I never get good 3G coverage in New York. I've always been very, very amused by the fact that on an Amtrak train going from 50 to 110 miles an hour from Boston to New York, I get good, strong, reliable digital data in 3G. As soon as I go to one of the biggest cities, most important cities in the world,
yeah.
Welcome to my world.
And if I leave it on 3G, I can't let the battery on my phone won't last a single day. Yeah. If I put it onto Edge, I'll still get access to text messages and the phone calls, but it will last as long as it would back in Boston. So.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my little tip. My iOS tips is just how to keep things lasting just a little bit longer. So now we're going to go to our tips of the week. Clayton, we'll let you kick it off.
Tips of the week? Are we still doing line tips?
I'm sorry. Picks of the week. Picks of the week. So I don't know how many people in the MacBreak Weekly audience use Stitcher, but I have now moved... Are you talking about Autodesk Stitcher, or are you talking about...
No, I'm talking Stitcher Radio.
Okay.
So Stitcher Radio for iOS. It also works on Android as well. They have a beautiful iPad app. So for those of you guys who aren't familiar with Stitcher, here is the iPad app. And what it does is you can add your favorite podcasts, any of your favorite shows in your favorites list. And it streams. So you're streaming all of your favorite podcasts and all your favorite shows. So MacBreak Weekly, anything you want to do. And most all of your favorite podcasts are likely to be in Stitcher. Some of them, if they haven't really notified Stitcher to get them published there, it's free. The app is free. They have on-demand stations as well.
And this is Stitcher. Is this Stitcher Radio?
Yeah, this is Stitcher Radio. So it works great on the iPhone. For a long time, I used it on the iPhone. So instead of downloading podcasts, if I was on vacation, if I was away from my main machine where I wanted to download, or I didn't have a Wi-Fi connection set up, and I just didn't have the ability to download, 40 megabyte show or something like that, Stitcher is great because it's as soon as the show is available on iTunes, or as soon as it's available wherever fine podcasts are sold, it's available in Stitcher. And the audio quality is fantastic, streams right over that. And the iOS app is great. And I use that all the time walking around. But you can, every time you log in, you have the ability to refresh your shows at the bottom of the screen. So you hit the little refresh bar at the bottom. All of your shows are updated, and you can have access to the previous episodes. That was a recent update. So I have all of my shows in there for streaming as well, all the shows that we produce. And it's fantastic. Yesterday we were driving the car up here to the mountains, and we just wanted to listen to some finance news. We wanted to hear some of the latest stuff out of Wall Street with what was going on. And we jumped in and we listened to like 6 or 7 in a row. We just hit play, and we were able to listen to some Wall Street Journal content.
And this is not downloading it. It's actually streaming it.
Right, and it's caching too. So I have done this where I've been running to get on a plane, and maybe I've been listening to MacBreak Weekly, or I've been listening to the Wall Street Journal this morning or something like that, and it's cached. And the plane takes off, and I admit that maybe I'm one of those people that didn't put my phone in airplane mode immediately, and I'm listening to the duration of the podcast, which has cached well enough for an hour and a half of the flight, and then once the show is over, I'm not able to get new content. But I really love Stitcher. I mean, I think that these guys do a great job, and plus there's all sorts of social integration. And what's great is it works between iOS apps. So if I'm listening on my iPhone and I stop an episode and I pick up my iPad, it'll pick up right where I left off on my iPhone. It'll say resuming episode, and boom, it's right there. So I really have to admit I've switched off of downloading quite a few podcasts now to streaming. And I think that this is where, hopefully Apple will be able to do some similar things with iCloud. But for right now, I think Stitcher has been well out in front of this and has been doing a really great job.
And it's free, isn't it?
It's free. It's free, and it's fantastic. I love it. And again, it's works on multiple devices, so it's not just iOS. It's Android, and I think it's also BlackBerry. I think it's also BlackBerry too. So, and presumably it works between apps, so it knows your account. It knows what your favorites are.
Right.
And when you're refreshing, it knows that you have favorites on one. It works better than MobileMe Sync.
Which isn't saying very much, but but it's better. So, Andy, what's your pick for the week?
My pick for the week is another iOS app. It's a app from Readdle called PDF Converter, and this shows the goodness and the badness of the App Store. There are about a half dozen apps that will in some way convert something you have on your iPad into a PDF. But PDF Converter by Readdle is the one you want. It's something like $5.99, $6.99, about $1 or $2 more expensive than the others, but it works exceptionally well. I'll show you one thing that I use it for all the time. There are a whole bunch of really cool services like Instapaper that will convert web pages into ebooks that you could then resync and then re-download. The great thing about PDF Converter is that it can convert pretty much any web page that you've got that you're watching right here on your iPad. And convert it into PDF without having to leave, without having to do anything else entirely. So if you've got a web page there's a really cool GQ article interview with Jerry Lewis, as you might have guessed. Really cool mechanism. All you have to do is go to Safari, right in Safari. You just move the cursor to the very, very front of the URL, add a PDF to it, PDF. The exact same URL. Now it's PDF, http://. Go to that URL in Safari. It will send that page into PDF Converter. I type the convert button, boink, and after a little bit of crunching, and that all happens on your iPad itself. It doesn't send anything elsewhere, so it's secure. I now have a PDF of that exact same web page that now lives right here on my iPad.
And can you add that to your iBooks or?
Exactly. You can then it completely works with any of the iOS's basic sharing services. So if I tap a button here, if there's a standard sharing button right here at the top, so I can just type open in, and now I can send this to any app that I've got on my iPad that can accept a PDF. So if I just tap iBooks, now that will be sent directly into iBooks and as a new permanent book. And it works both ways too, so that if you've got like an email attachment, it can basically open any Office file, any iWork file, emails with attachments, convert those things into PDFs. It can take documents you've got inside Dropbox or iDisk and convert those to PDF. It also has the company also has another app called PDF Pro, I think it's called.
And is the company ready? Is that right? The problem is there's two PDF converters.
Yeah, it's one of those really silly generic. It's readdle.com. Readdle, I think.
Readdle. Okay, got it. Because there's another PDF converter for the iPad that is something else. It's red or whatever, and so. But
that's the one you want. That's the one you got right there.
Okay.
And the other cool thing is that they have a companion app called PDF Expert. A PDF converter will do the conversion. It'll also store PDFs locally, password protected if you'd like. So it's a good file cabinet app for keeping documents on your iPad. But it also has a companion app which will let you annotate, sign stuff, do little edits to PDFs, and then resend them elsewhere. So that's a $9.99 extra. Not everybody uses that, but in term to solve the basic problem of I've got this thing that I've seen on the web. I want to capture it and keep it forever and ever so that I never lose it, and I don't want to ever have to count on having a 3G connection to somebody else in order to resync it. This is a really, really great solution. The other cool thing is that you can also email right from the app, so that if you've got so it's very, very easy to then capture something, then resend it to somebody else, or email it into Instapaper, or email it into one of your cloud services if you've got an inbox that works that way. So not expensive at all. Really clean app, looks pretty, very, very useful. I didn't even bother trying to scam a free code for it. As a member of the press, it was like, okay, this is useful, this is good. You've got my $5.99.
Well, I thought it was funny. Web7138 in the chat room said, I find it really tough to spend more than $5 on an app, and I was like, we've really come a long way when we're sitting like, oh. They went over $5. Really? I mean, you got
to do the Homer Simpson. Oh, $5, eh? it only transports matter, not energy. Oh, I don't know.
Oh, Marge.
So PDF converter, and it is by.
Thank God World War II didn't have to be fought by people like us.
Exactly. I don't know if it would have, it's kind of rainy out there, and the water looks a little rough. I don't know if those beaches looked so good today. It's all that barbed wire. I don't think I'm going to get a good tan. So anyway, so my pick of the week is OmniGraph Sketcher. Andy, have you used this at all? Yes. This is a little bit of a vertical, and I don't know if have you seen this, Clayton?
Yeah, I have. It's incredible. These guys, and this is the Omni group that does incredible stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have all their apps, but OmniGraph Sketcher is it's a little bit. It's for people who are, if you need to show graphs and so on and so forth. There's a couple things that it does. It allows you to clean up data. So sometimes you're not going to use the built-in graph. Well, actually, for some reason, like I've been doing a lot of stuff in Keynote where I have to show a whole bunch of graphs right now. If you put in a lot of data into Keynote, just in case you're wondering, Keynote doesn't crash, but you think it did because it just goes, it just totally locks up, and it can't handle a lot of that data, and so you need somewhere where I can get a graph. I need an image that I'm going to take somewhere else. I'm going to do whatever I'm going to do to it, but I need it to be nice and clean, and I want to adjust it, and I want to make it look pretty, and I want to do those kind of things that I'm going to put that graph somewhere else, and I don't want to do it live because it's too much data. And I might want to adjust that data and move it around. And so that's one of the things that's what I'm using this for. And it's, you can take data and plot it, but you can also, a lot of times you just want to say, and the equation's going to get better. It's just going to, and then we're going to sell more, and you just want to draw a line. But before OmniGraph Sketcher, you have to think about, like, what do I input into numbers or into something so I can get a graph to show what I wanted to show. I just want to say that it's going to go up. I don't need to say it's going to go up exactly this much. But now I'm typing in stuff so I can get a graph that looks that way. With OmniGraph Sketcher, you can actually just draw it. Just draw the graph, and it actually puts in value points that's going to give you that result. And so you have that result. In fact, one of the things that I've used it for is actually drawing that line and then cutting and pasting those value points into a document that I can then have as a graph that can animate and all the other stuff in Keynote. And so the ability to do that, you can also color in regions. You can make them, you can do all the pretty things that you want to do with graphs without using necessarily something like Illustrator or something that's much more expensive or much more complicated. This is a super simple way to do it. There are a couple things that I'd love to see them add. I'd love to see them make it easier for me to. What it really needs to do is sample along the x-axis a little bit better. So like when you're drawing, I want it to sample every time there's a tick mark. I want it to just grab wherever that position of the piece is and add a control point, because that's typically how a lot of rise run calculations work. So I'd kind of like to see that. I'd like to be able to control how often it's sampling those points. So there are things that. I'd like to see in the next version, but I will say there's no other app like this that I've run across that allows you to grab a lot of data and visualize it. I needed to do a graph, and I had to find the Dow Jones data from the 20s and 30s, which were very rocky, as you know, almost as rocky as today, and I needed to get that graph, and I needed to put it into a graph format. And I go up to the web, I could download an Excel file with all the Dow Jones since its beginning, grab the section that I needed, and just paste it in, and bam, I got a graph. And I don't have to think about how that's going to get converted. I don't have to think about any of those pieces, and it was really, really easy. And so anyway, OmniGraph Sketcher. It is, I believe, $30 for the Mac. I think there's another version that's also available on the iPad. And it's a great, if you're doing that kind of thing, it's a great little application. And as I said, I don't know of anyone else that's doing it. And of course, because the Omni Group's doing it, it's going to be clean, stable, and do exactly what it says it's going to do. So anyway, OmniGraph Sketcher, and I think it's like, as I said, I can get a 14-day trial at the Omni Group's website. So that concludes our excitement for the day. Clayton, where can people find you?
Well, they can always find me on Fox and Friends on the Fox News channel, and I do the weekend show. So give us a chance sometime if you haven't had a chance to watch us. We have a lot of fun on that show, and also you can check out we're just about to. Alex, you and I talked a few weeks ago when you were in New York. Going through the pains of building our new website. So we've got a portion of the redirect up right now at grizzlyproductions.tv, and so we're building the main hub where all of our shows will live.
It looks great. Is it still pretty much what I
Well, yeah, what you saw were the plans,
Mm-hmm.
but right now we're just sort of laying some of the graphic implementation and sort of coming together. So the shows live in disparate places right now, but I would say all of the shows that we do, Daddy on Board, the Grizzly Bear Egg Cafe, and our Mommy show, Mommy Beta, they're all going to be on one roof. We may be very soon launching an autism show and also a sports show is coming to the network very soon, which will be great. Not hosted by me, but it'll be there. But one thing I want to say for iOS fans, on our Daddy on Board show, I would love you guys to check it out. If you just go to, you can search for us on Blip or on iTunes. It's a video show. We review a lot of kids' apps every week on the show, and we have a lot of people send us their favorites, and there's so many to pick from, and we just have a great audience that has been testing them with and trust me, they're kid tested. So when the kids are testing them and then the parents approve and they tell us about it, we share them and we show them on our show every week. We have an app section of our show where we just specifically do kids' apps, so we have some great ones coming up this week as my wife writes for Consumer Reports. So she's reviewed this really incredible app for the kids that you put the kid's foot on an iPad, and it measures the kid's foot based on how fast they're growing. And you can you put the little footprint in cement before. Mm-hmm. Now you use an iPad to do it. So so we have a lot of fun on Daddy on Board, and we have a lot of apps there. So you can check that out every week.
Daddy on Board, and it's something that I should be listening to more often. I listen to I think a couple of them, but I'm in the trenches there. with you.
Well, maybe one day your daughter will text message you about how you can be a better parent by watching this.
Yes. Well, my 3-year-old.
You're at a restaurant. She could status update you on Facebook and let you know.
Being the country boy that I am, my son didn't want to go to school this morning because he was because someone hit him in school because he took something from them, and then they hit him in the arm. And I said, "Is there a scar? Do you have any blood? Were you bleeding? Did we have to take you to the hospital?" And he's like, "Well, no." And I said, "Okay, then it really wasn't a hit, was it?" And he's like, "Okay, I'm ready to go to school." So that's the country boy way of handling it. Like, if there's no cuts, then we're all fine. So I don't know what kind of father that makes me. But anyway, Andy, where can people find you?
As usual, Ihnatko.com, my website, has links to all the cool stuff that I'm doing, hopefully online. Suntimes.com has my column, usually about 4 to 6 times a month, at least 1 week. And also, whenever the pigs are screwing around the kid, I'll be there. Wherever there's injustice in the world, I'll be there. I'm like sort of a Jode of the tech world. At least that's how I'm marketing myself. I'm trying to rebrand for the digital millennium.
All right. And with that, break time is over. Get back to work.